morning and welcome to another edition of Roadhouse Live. We are live. Today is June 20. June 20, Bender, coming off of a long weekend full of rest and relaxation, full of
That
all
was
sorts of stuff.
that was definitely not my weekend.
No rest and relaxation?
It was not rest and relaxation. No.
Well, that's just a shame. I think you should go ahead and file a complaint with somebody and say that you want your weekend back. You want a refund.
The only one that can give me that would be my wife, and I don't know that she's going to go for that. So I might just be out of luck on this one. Just kind of chalk it up.
It happens. It definitely happens. All right. So we're coming into a week after a pretty good run. Looks as if SPY wants to go ahead and or the markets want to go ahead and take a massive pullback of a whopping 50 cents, 60 cents from close. VIX relatively flat, slightly elevated. Dollar was goofing around to the upside a little bit overnight. News coming out of China, which is really the main chunk of news. Blinken met with Xi. Everybody wants to play nice, all that kind of stuff, but it's like there's definitely posturing going on from the standpoint of while they do want to, kind of limit exposure in China. The concept of decoupling could be very destabilizing for the global market. So, with that being said, they're going to try to work something out and try to be friends and try to be pals without really trying to be pals. They're going to be the ultimate frenemies between now and the end of time, unless somebody starts firing hot rocks at one or the other. That's just the way that's going to shake out. Things to kind of watch for the week. We have Powell testifying in front of Congress Wednesday and Thursday, I believe. A couple of Fed speakers today, but I believe that they're after hours for the most part. I think Bullard already, gripped and ripped and said what he had to say this morning. And then going into this week from a data standpoint, there's not just a massive amount of data, but there's something for the market to move on. So make sure you're checking your calendars to be aware of what's going on. One of the bigger events is going to be after hours today with FedEx reporting. Transports have always kind of led, I don't want to say led, but are a pretty good indicator on the overall markets. And it does look as if the way China is hell bent on pumping stimulus, that their recovery is not going to plan. It's not working out the way that they thought that it would. You can point your finger in a lot of different directions on that, but the bottom line is they are not recovering the way they had once hoped. A couple of interesting pieces that I read, just arbitrary, something to keep in mind on that. It's like when, if you look up here in Discord and we start looking at housing starts, that kind of stuff, these companies have reported pretty well, but some of this data is starting to come in a little bit shaky. And there was a increase in default on home ownership, I think over the last data point, and it's mainly pointing back to the surprise increase in insurance and property taxes. Insurance and property taxes. So when you pay 20, 30, 40, sometimes 2x what the previous owner paid, and you get that little tax bill that basically doubles, that's I think that could be an impact that a lot of people weren't necessarily expecting from a month-to-month basis. So something to keep an eye on, just watching that data as it kind of filters through. I don't know that there's anything actionable within it as far as the market is concerned to trade on for today, for the week. I don't believe that there necessarily is anything there. One ticker that has me really intrigued, like really eyes wide open and looking at it, is AMD. Want to spend a couple of seconds just talking about AMD a little bit. It's trying to pop here a little bit, make a move higher, but it is still down on the session with other semis basically flat to up. When you're looking at AMD, it was basically held within the same, that's NVIDIA Lite, that's NVIDIA's little brother, whatever you want to call it. But if you're looking at the chart, AMD has pulled back off of 130, is now trading below 120. That's a pretty good pullback on AMD. And the question is, in my opinion, is this the beginning of an overall trend for that sector as far as this pullback, this drawdown? Or is this an area on AMD that we should be looking to buy? If you're pulling up a 1 hour chart on AMD, this area down around here, becomes very intriguing right around this 118.50 area as far as potential buy area if it gets down in there. After that, you have to start looking at 116, something like that. But I'm going to be watching AMD flow very, very closely today, not only for the weeklies, but pushing out to see if there's something there. Is this the buy the dip opportunity? That's a good pullback on AMD, or are we starting to see some shakiness in the sector altogether? Semis have led this upside push. We have seen some, I don't want to say strength, but some catch up coming in some different sectors. Banks are still trash. Some of the tickers that have run really heavily, like a SoFi in particular, has gotten beaten with a baseball bat over the past couple of sessions. So now the question is where are we and where can we anticipate going using, what word am I looking for here? Probabilities, Bender, probabilities, likelihoods. What do you think about a likelihood? Can you show us some likelihoods and probabilities on your chart?
I sure can. I can give you some hypotheticals, some what ifs.
That's good. Some hypothesizations. Sort of, can we do that?
Sure.
Would you care to pontificate?
I don't even know what that means.
Do that in private.
I'm going to go ahead and say yes, because I don't know what it means.
Pontificate has always been one of those weird words that I'm just like, is that really a word?
I was just going to ask, are you sure that's even a word, or was somebody tricking you? I know it's a word
because this dude back in my prior work life, 15 years ago, used it all the time, and I wanted to hit him with a stick. Thought about it a couple of times, but never actually hit him with a stick. So yeah, go ahead. Let's do the walk.
It reminds me a little bit of what's it, Will Ferrell. Like, what movie was that from? Where you're using big words and I don't know what they mean, so I'm going to take it as offensive. I can't remember. Anyway, all right. Well, what I've got up is ES chart. We're looking at a 1 hour chart, and what I'm looking at here is I measured. Back to, okay. Measured this move from 43.93, was that 43.93.75 up to the high that we put in on the 16th, 44.93 half. And essentially what we've done thus far is pull back to the 618. And so far you can see it pulled back to the tick, right? So the reason I want to show this is because, okay, we pulled back to the 618. If they're going to buy it, again, this is a 60 minutes, so we're not looking, this isn't the daily or anything like that, but at least based on the move, that started late last week, was it on Friday, something like that, based on this most recent up move, this is a pullback right to the 618. So now we want to see if this holds. If it does, we can continue higher. If this gives, you can see this candle here, this 60-minute candle. There is a lot of, there's a decent size area in here that was very sort of one-way price action that we can look to get some of that, back and fill. And this 44.1175 that I have down here, that comes from the 15-minute. If I zoom into the 15-minute, you can see that's kind of where this starts. That 60-minute candle that we were just looking at, that's kind of where it starts. Not kind of, that's where it starts. Would be that 44.1225. So I think, if we give up that 618 and can't reclaim it, we'll probably fill back into this at a minimum to that 44.1175. And I wouldn't necessarily expect that to stop it. We might get a bounce there. But then below that, you have the 4,400 test, 4,400 whole number, and then 43.93.75. Below that, you have this low, 43.81.75. I would think that if it's below that 618, I could throw a 786 up here as well, and we can see where that's at. That would come in 44.15. I think below that 618 that it's probably at that point it would likely fill this in and probably go test 4,400. So that's 43 down from here. We're currently sitting 44, 43 half. So you got that 618, 44.32, and then 44, 11.75, and 4,400. As far as upside is concerned, 44.48 is the London session high here. That's kind of the first level to watch. You can see, again, 15-minute candles. You can see these down candles here. Essentially, we've kind of filled in right to the top of these down candles, right? So this is be kind of like back and fill on this, on these down close candles. If we get through that, then we need to watch that London session high, 44, 47.75, and see what it does, right? That's the level where we need to see if we're going to wick it and pull that back down below, or if we're going to get through it, hold it as support, and ultimately start climbing again. This gray shaded area right here, this is previous new week opening gap, right around 40, tops out at 44.60. So there's not a whole lot, as you can see on the 15-minute here, that hasn't been already filled back in, right? That like once, if we get through 44, 47.75 and can hold it, there's not a whole lot in here. There's really nothing that needs to be filled back in until you get up in this area up here, 44.60, 44.65. So the point to that is that if we get above 47.75 and we can hold it, then it's like, okay, what would the objective be? What would it be going for? Well, the first thing would be that new week opening gap, right? And then this shaded box up here. Zoom that down or scale this box down just a little bit. So I think above that, London high, if it can hold, then we target 10 higher from there, because it'll probably go test this new week opening gap.
So you're leaning for an upside push in through here. Am I gathering that correctly?
No,
Oh.
I'm not. I would not be surprised to see this 618 give out and for it to go fill back some of this back in. But it just kind of, you asked for, we talked about some if this then that type scenarios this morning, and that's what they look like. If we do get above that 44, 47.75 and we can hold it, okay, cool. Then I'll be playing for an upside
Then we
move.
bang. Right.
At least to that new week opening gap, with the second target being this shaded box here, 44.66 half. And if we can't take that and hold it, then I'll be looking for a push below that 618 and then to backfill this down to 44.1175.
It's a pretty good ways down.
Yeah. I mean, it gives you 30, that's 30 down from current levels. This shaded box being 20 up from where we sit right now.
Okay.
Going back to kind of the conversations we were having last week, if I zoom this back out to a 60-minute, this would be the buy zone, the pullback off this move, right? That would be the buy zone between 50% and 61.8%.
Falling wedge flag, whatever, up against previous high. Yeah, no, that's picture perfect. Yep. You can't draw it any better than that for a move higher.
So for me, I have to look at this and go, when if I'm kind of looking at it going, well, I think in the near term, maybe we've topped and like we talked about, maybe I think things should cool off a little bit. Obviously that doesn't mean it'll happen because I want it. There's probably other people that want it, and therefore we may not get it. And that means that I need to look at this chart and go, okay, well, this would be the buy zone. And the idea of backfilling some of this price action from the last few days, I have to kind of invalidate that if we get above that 44, 48. If we get above that and hold and start pushing, it's like, okay, yeah, we're not coming down here, at least not in the morning session or not right now. So we might as well play up to that new week opening gap and set a target on the shaded box in here. Instead of just, I can't sit there and go, well, I think we're going to give this up. And if we do, then we come down here. And meanwhile, we just climb higher, higher, higher. It's like, no.
And then you get the candle that
flip
rips
the
through.
script.
Yeah. It's like and that's the thing. It's like, because when you're looking at that, it's like, okay, so we've come down to the bottom we retested the prior high, kind of, we're stabilizing to move higher off of, call it a flag, call it a falling wedge, whatever you want to call it, and potentially to break out to retest those highs. It's like, you can see it within the chart. It's right there. But those things don't always have to play out to just picture perfect like that. And I think what's different about this and showing that in comparison to other things, I do think that the dollar comes back into play here pretty quickly as far as being an element that we're going to have to contend with. And I've said this a couple of times, and it works for like 3 days, and then it goes away again. But the dollar has made a move higher off of this overnight session coming in. And I think a lot of that is going to go back to being the best turd in the bowl. So we've seen some catch up in Europe, catch up in Japan. Even China has caught up from that standpoint in a lot of ways. What's different here is if China keeps on pumping stem, that's because they're not doing all that well. I don't know how much better Japan can do than what they've been putting out. And I don't know how much more Europe can do with what they've been putting out as far as recovering. Well, one thing that is consistent and constant is everybody looks to the dollar if there's any chance of weakness taking place anywhere. The dollar is and has been the hedge, because everybody's going to come out. It's going to be America. That's how they see it. That's how they view it. And so when you're looking at the dollar vendor, it's like this thing continues to try to make higher highs. Now you can look at it and be like, well, yeah, that could be just a bear flag stretching out on the 1 hour. But bear flags have a tendency sometimes to not play out, especially when they're up against, call it a double or triple bottom on the daily, which the dollar is basically done. Just something to keep in mind as we're kind of walking through this a little bit. So do you have any thoughts on that piece?
I just posted this is just a daily of the dollar coming down to essentially that golden zone, right? 50 to 61.8%. So I think, I think, like you said, watching this double bottom, quote unquote, double bottom,
quote
right
unquote,
in here. Yep. I think that makes sense. Let's throw, and we got a ways to go. This is the only thing. Like, okay, so on this push down, change this color here. All right, where did we go? So essentially pulled down, bounced to just shy of that 382. Didn't even make it to the 50% retracement. But I can kind of see what you were just talking about. Get this sort of trend line coming in here. Then you've got this wedge bottom here. So, it's we either look for a break above that trend line or below the double bottom.
Mm-hmm. And it's like the dollar has refused to break underneath that level. It's just been like, no, good luck, thanks. it's completely refused. But it's like, unless the data comes in, economic data comes in like really really sour, we can't expect it to. And the way that the data has been holding, you know, fairly well, it's like we have to expect the dollar to continue to chop in this range as it before it decides where it's going to break out or break down.
Yep. I'm going to go
But
back to the ES for just a second.
okay.
And because we were just talking about the, you know, bearish versus bullish, sort of when to flip the script, or what it's going to take to change your mind, sort of thing. But when you look at it, like, this is a 4-hour chart, right? And we were talking about this last week. Like, do you see anything bearish about this chart?
Mm-hmm. Nope.
No, right? And so, you know, when you take that bigger picture view, it's like it just keeps legging higher, right? The only thing that that I've kind of got stuck in my head is the fact that we took those previous highs, you know, August last year, and essentially came and filled in. You can see that blue shaded box and kind of where that these candles come in on the daily. When I zoom in, this was the top of a fair value gap, right? So we essentially filled that in, and you've got this little volume imbalance in here. Let me throw that right here. I'll extend that out and let's see where that comes in. Okay, so you've still got that sitting up there just above. So what's that at? 45.15. We'll keep an eye on that moving forward, this little volume imbalance right in here, because that would be kind of that next level that we'd have to look out for. If it gets through that, it probably goes in and fills in the rest of this daily candle here, 45.62, and then ultimately, you know, this high up here. So the reason I show that is because, again, if we go back to a 4-hour chart, it's like there's nothing bearish about it at the moment. Yeah, we went and we took out some of those highs. It doesn't mean that there's not still targets up above that they're looking for. You know, when you look at it kind of this way, it's like, well, that's not that far. You know,
And truly,
60,
by the time you can
65
identify,
points.
by the time you can identify that chart as being bearish, it's like it's already bearish. If
Right.
that makes sense, it's like we've spilt a pretty good ways as far as being like, oh, there's a bearish setup. That's, you know, I
Well,
think yeah.
so this is where it's like, okay, let's go back to a 15-minute real quick. If you were looking to short,
Mm-hmm.
right, it's up right up against this candle. Now
Right
it's
up where
filled all this
where
back in.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, you know, you're looking for the lowest risk that you can find, best sort of risk reward scenario, where it has to travel the least amount for you to, you know, essentially invalidate the setup. So it's like, you know, we always talk about, if you're looking to short, you don't sell red candles, you sell green candles. If you're looking to go long, you don't buy green candles, you buy red candles. So you're looking for these green candles as your opportunity, and you're looking for an area where it's like, okay, I don't have to give it, you know, I'd have to give that about, you know, 3-4 handles to invalidate. And if it invalidates, then you look for a pullback into a fair value gap and you look to take it the other way, right? I just say that because, yeah, looking at a 4-hour, it's like you would have to, before you could look at the chart and say, okay, well, it's starting to look kind of bearish. You're talking about being down here below 43.80, which would be 60 points from here, right? So you either wait for that move and then retest, and then, or
or you try to front run it and risk getting steamrolled.
Right. Which is, getting steamrolled doesn't hurt if you have good entries with tight
and
stops.
you're willing to take the L and be like, okay,
Yeah.
well that didn't work.
That didn't work. Yep. Moving on. Right. So anyway,
All right, we got Stonk today.
I don't see the Stonkington or the Sun. That's why I just kind of kept going.
Okay.
Oh, one last thing. You were talking about transports. So here's the DJT. And I was actually looking at this yesterday because like a lot of other things, right? It made this nice move, pull back to that 50% level, and then fired higher, right? It's come back down. It's kind of tested that level a few times. And off this down move, it is essentially retraced to the 618. Just kind of a wick higher there. So I think this could come into play. This chart could come into play as well. If it gets through that 618, let's say where are we at? 14,944 gets through that, then we're probably banging higher, and it can carry a lot of other things with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
All right.
I'll be watching this one as well.
Well, Stonkington's being challenged when it comes to interwebs. This would be the second day in a row that he's having interweb challenges as far as how to double click. So we're going to get.
Doesn't he lives in a place that has pretty reliable internet, right?
It's like it was the whole thing as far as yesterday he couldn't get on for the webinar because I had to again offer tech support. I don't feel like offering him tech support this morning, so we're gonna kind of just hope that he can figure it out overnight.
I think you should open a tech support line. I think that would be entertaining. I mean, even if it's just like that could be one of those. That could be really fun. Like, one of your non-tech friends calls you and like, hey man, do you know, like my phone's doing this weird thing. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. And then, I'm like, oh, well, I know a guy he'll help you for free. He offers a free, tech support line. You just call in. And my buddy calls in and asks you a question. You just give him some, like, that could be fun. Like, set up kind of a,
I'm
a fake support number where you could just lay into them when they call. Well, did you try to plug it in? Try to unplug it? Plug it in again.
Did you?
Did you?
But that's the thing, because odds are they're going to say no, I didn't try that. Well, then you need to try that before you call this level of support for the technologies, because we got all sorts of technology supports over here, all sorts, like stuff that nobody's ever even heard of. It's so advanced.
What are some of these things? All right, we got what do we got? 11 minutes. I don't think I want to talk about your tech support skills for the next 11 minutes.
Fine. I keep on helping the people. You keep on just doubting my ability. All right.
Yes.
Yeah. 10, 11 minutes to start to open. Yeah, guys, let's have a good day. It's been laid out pretty well. Flow that I'm going to be watching the closest. I really want to see what's going on with AMD. That's a pretty decent pullback. I want
it's got
to see
a gap down there.
Show me a fucking chart without a gap. Show me one without a gap.
AT&T?
They don't count. They move like 8 cents a day. They don't count.
No gaps.
Intel has a gap. It's like, and that's really something. AMD is going to be just mainly because of the sector that it's in. I'm going to be watching that very closely. It's like the question is, are they hitting 130 calls, 125 calls, or are they coming into the 110s and 115s trying to hit those? So that's going to be like a real point of contention for me there. Also want to keep an eye on flow in and around IWM. It's had a nice run. Want to see how that flow is kind of shaking a little bit over there. We know Tesla flow has been bullish, but there were a couple of squirrely lines that came in at the end of the week last week. What else was there? Meta has not had a lot of flow over the last, I'd say, week or so. So again, it's had a really nice run. Want to see how that flow is kind of working moving forward over the next couple of weeks, especially going into that July expiration. Because we have to start looking at that July 21 date as far as, okay, so how is money being positioned? What's going on? So those are going to be my main watches for the day. That's all I got, guys. That's it. We now have 9 minutes to go, Binda. Thank you very much for the charts. We'll see you guys soon.
See you in a few.